A Christmas Cornucopia. The Hidden Stories Behind Our Yuletide Traditions by Mark Forsyth. Picture a man sitting beside a dead tree. He is indoors and wearing a crown. From the ceiling hangs a parasitical shrub that legitimates sexual assault. He is singing to himself about a 10th century Middle European murder victim using a 16th century Finnish melody. Earlier, he told his children that the house had been broken into during the night by an obese Turkish man. This was a lie, but he wanted to make his children happy. Far away, in the high Andes, two Peruvians are punching each other very hard indeed. And nobody thinks any of this is odd. Well, actually, the Peruvian pugilists are a bit strange, but I'll come to them in a minute. The point is that Christmas is objectively, clearly, and plainly doolally. It is balmy, barking, and bats. If one were to try and explain it to an outsider, let's say a reasonably bright alien, what was going on, they would probably be baffled, and then blow up the planet just to be on the safe side. There's a lovely story about a Tokyo department store, back in the days when Christmas was unknown in Japan. The head of this store had heard rumours of a Western tradition that involved a massive shopping spree, and he wanted to introduce it to Tokyo. So he sent some of his staff to investigate, and the result was that on Christmas Eve, the shop's main window was decorated with a huge Santa Claus, nailed to a cross. Like all the best stories, that story is utterly untrue, but it persists. It persists because it makes us laugh, and it makes us laugh because we wonder how anything that ridiculous could happen at Christmas. When we've stopped laughing, we attach a fairy to the top of the Christmas tree and hang up our stockings by the fire. Why? Why do we do these strange things? Why, for a few weeks every year, do we take off our sanity, hang it neatly on a peg, and dive into a sea of insanity while singing about how we saw 3 ships? Not only is it strange, what is stranger still is that we do not think it's strange. Nobody asks where these traditions came from. Well, actually, some people do ask, and they tend to come up with 2 answers which utterly contradict each other. Answer number 1 is that Christmas is all pagan, the lot of it. All pre-Christian stuff from thousands of years ago. The methodology for this is usually something along the lines of, Santa Claus has a beard. Odin had a beard. Therefore Santa Claus is Odin. By this reasoning, Gilgamesh, the king of ancient Uruk, is in fact Captain Birdseye, because they both have a beard and a boat. This answer appeals for 2 reasons. First, it's rather romantic to think we've been carrying on traditions that date back thousands upon thousands of years into the dark abyss of time. Second, it makes you sound terribly well-read and clever. Answer number 2 is that Christmas is all Victorian. The whole festival was invented wholesale by Charles Dickens and Coca-Cola, who then used it to sell soft drinks and long novels. This answer appeals because it makes you sound terribly cynical and clever. A good example of both of these, all pagan and all Victorian, is kissing under the mistletoe. First, the pagan explanation. Several very respectable books will tell you that this all goes back to the death of Baldur. Baldur was a Norse god who was killed by an arrow made of mistletoe. His mother, the unfortunately named goddess Frigg, cried and her tears became the white mistletoe berries. Then, as her son's cadaver was being loaded onto a very flammable longship, she swore that nobody should ever again suffer from this little plant, and that we should instead kiss under it. It's a lovely story, but if you dig out the Norse accounts of Baldur's death, there are 4 of them, you'll find that it's just not true. Well, the first bit is, Baldur was killed by a mistletoe arrow, but that's it. The rest simply isn't there. No tears become berries. And there's certainly nothing in there about kissing. Instead, Frigg is much more Norse about the whole thing. She finds the guy who made the arrow and tortures him for all eternity. Viking literature contains an awful lot of torture and very little snogging. Alternatively, there's the Victorian explanation. You might pull out some equally respectable-looking history books that will tell you that kissing under the mistletoe was invented in 1819 by a friend of Charles Dickens called Washington Irving. Irving was an American writer who wrote a book, for an American audience, called Old Christmas, about all the wonderful Yuletide traditions he had observed while staying at an English country house. In it, he talks about the custom of kissing under the mistletoe. Old Christmas was a massive bestseller, first in America and later in Britain itself. It became the standard work on how Christmas used to be, and therefore on how Christmas should be. People on both sides of the ocean read it as an instruction manual for the real, authentic, unpolluted traditional Christmas, and then imitated it in their own homes. However, there were some suspicious cynics who thought that Washington Irving had made most of it up. There are always cynical people in the world, and their case was substantially bolstered when Washington Irving later confessed he had made most of it up. But not the mistletoe. A musical came out in 1784 called 2 for 1, and one of the songs went, "When at Christmas in the hall the men and maids are hopping, if by chance I hear them bawl, amongst them quick I pop in. What all the men, Jem, John and Joe, cry what good luck has sent ye, and kiss beneath the mistletoe the girl not turned of 20. Washington Irving didn't make up mistletoe. Somebody must have at some point. There was a rather curious chap called Sir John Colbatch who wrote a whole book on mistletoe in 1719. But that wasn't enough. Next year he wrote another one. His books are mainly about how he reckoned mistletoe could cure epilepsy. But he also wrote down every other thing that he knew about mistletoe, including all the customs and superstitions associated with it. And he doesn't mention kissing, not once. So kissing beneath the mistletoe isn't pagan, and it isn't a Victorian invention either. It started sometime between 1720 and 1784, and I don't know why, and I never will for certain, although I can take a pretty shrewd guess it involved a particularly lusty and inventive boy and a particularly gullible girl. Of course, some Christmas traditions are Victorian and some pagan. Let us go to Peru. Let us go to the village of Santo Tomas, 12,000 feet above sea level, and let us imagine it is the 25th of December. After a brief visit to the church, all the villagers dress up and punch each other. Really very hard. This isn't a play fight or ceremonial dance, this is a punch-up. 2 by 2, the villagers square off. Men fight men, women fight women. There's no biting, but that's it for rules. The crowd is not allowed to get involved, and if they do, there's a man with a whip who'll whip them. This is the festival of Takanakui. The idea, apparently, and I've never hit a Peruvian so I wouldn't know, is that it's a way of getting it all out of your system. If your neighbour has been peeving you all year, or saying unfair things about your llama, you may enter the ring, call out your neighbour's name, and attempt to pummel the living daylights out of him or her. This is apparently immensely therapeutic, but I imagine it's more therapeutic for the big people than the little ones. Also, you have to wear a fancy dress. Takanakui is a good example of a festival that just happens to be on December the 25th. And when Christianity and Christmas came along with its do-goody, sentimental message of love thy neighbour, the people of Santo Tomas thought that the two would work rather well together. It is vitally important when writing about traditions to remember there are only 365 days in the year, and only so many common species of plants. Overlap is not significance. Each year, on the occasion of the Unity of Peoples of Russia and Belarus Day, I get drunk. I do this even though I'm neither Russian nor Belarusian, nor particularly unified. April the 2nd just happens to be my birthday. In fact, I was born during the Grand National, but I'm not a horse. Now I am aware, dear reader, that I may have been a little boring in the last few paragraphs. All I've told you is that I don't know why people kiss under the mistletoe. The rest will be better. The rest will provide explanations. But I thought I should tell you the sort of nonsense I'm not telling you. On pretty much every aspect of Christmas, there are silly theories that don't have any evidence to back them up. From here on in, I'm going to tell you only what I believe to be true. At pretty much every stage, I could run off blathering about Frigg or Balder, only to finish up by telling you why it's wrong. And you would quite reasonably say to yourself, why am I being told of theories that aren't true? Why does he feel the need to dispel myths of which I've never heard? So I shan't. One last thing, before we begin. It may seem in what follows that I'm being a bit cynical, a bit mocking, that I'm indulging in bar humbuggery. Nothing could be more distant from the truth. It is true that many of our traditions are a little silly. Some of them are merely accidents. Some are indeed marketing ploys. Really, it doesn't matter what your traditions are. What's important is that they're there. Christmas is a great and grand truth. It's an eternal truth, even if it's a truth made of turkey and tinsel. But the great truths, the eternal ones, can only truly be grasped by mystics, by people who can see into the perfect minds of gods. And these truths will never shift with the seasons. They have no place and no time. But they can be grasped by the mystic in everlasting meditation. I imagine it must be wonderful to be a mystic, if a little tiring. For the rest of us, we need truth to have a date and a place. That way we can see it, like spray painting the Invisible Man. We dress love up as a wedding, and death as a funeral, so that we can see them both. What is true at Christmas is true on Midsummer's Day, but we cannot see it then. Truth for us must have its when. Truth must have its what. We even need a how, we who are neither mystics nor angels. And what follows has nothing to do with that truth. What follows is a way for the what, a why for the how, and a why for the when. Why do we have Christmas trees? Why do we celebrate with vast amounts of meat? And why on earth do we do it on the 25th of December?